All right, looks like we are live on Facebook. Welcome, everyone. Hope you're having a great Thursday. So, tonight's topic is we're going to talk about how doing hard things actually can lead you to happiness. And so, for those of you that are first joining my channel and you haven't seen my stuff before, my name is Tina. I'm a happiness coach and I help people deal with feelings of depression and anxiety and frustration and um, just overall depression and those kind of harder to deal with emotions. And I help you move through those to get you to a happier place. Thank you so much, Frisha, for the rose. I appreciate you. So today, like I said, I want to talk about um, how doing the hard things leads you to happiness. And now this is going to be a little different from what most people consider doing the hard things, and the hustle and the grind and all of that kind of stuff is super popular, and I am no David Goggins. Although I like to imagine myself being like him, but I am definitely not that hard. I'm much more soft. But I am resilient as fuck. So I want to share with you some tips and strategies of things that I've used to help me go through those harder times. And I want to talk about how defining what is hard. And I find most of the time it's the emotional stuff that is actually hard versus the actual task of whatever it is that you're doing. So think of trying to get yourself to do something that you don't want to do. That can be something that is really hard, and understanding why you're not wanting to do that thing and why it is important to do those things is much more beneficial than just like forcing yourself to do the hard things, right? Because when I think of hard, it's not the task, it's not the physical activity, it's not the system, it's not the process of just being consistent. Being consistent is actually very easy to do when you know why you're being consistent about something. It actually takes a lot of the pressure off to be consistent, and now you don't have to think of it, and now it's just a habit. Hi Malik, welcome. Thank you so much for the rose. I appreciate you. So it, the act of being consistent is something that actually relieves a lot of pressure. It takes a lot of mental bandwidth away. Following a system, following a structure, it leaves you, now you don't have to think about it, and you can actually just move forward out of um, repetition, that you're just going through the motions. You don't have to put a lot of energy into thinking about what it is that you need to do. Where doing the hard things comes in and where it leads to the most happiness is when you have the ability to actually control your emotions, and you have the ability to still act even though you might be afraid, even though you might be angry, even though you might want to lose your shit over something. Your ability to manage your emotions and do that as a hard thing, to stay calm when you want to cry, when you want to scream, when you want to yell, and be able to stay in that ability to manage your own emotions, that you can stay calm, that you can find a solution that not only benefits you, it's not a us against them, it is something that benefits me and it also benefits the other person. And when I can get myself into that state and be able to find that kind of solution, that is the best and the hardest thing to do, but it will lead to the most happiness. And sometimes that's not easy. The worst thing you could ever do is pray for strength or pray for patience, because all that's going to happen is you're just going to be given task after task after task and situation after situation to allow you to become more patient. you're going to get tested in so many different ways. And, if you are not feeling like you have the strength to endure all that life is going to throw at you, life, God, the universe, whatever it is that you believe in, is just going to throw test after test after test to test your strength, test your endurance, test your willingness to stick with it, to follow through. How bad do you want it? Are you willing to, like, are you willing to die for this? Are you willing to stand against every adversity that you're faced with? Are you willing? And you might be like, oh my God, I want to throw in the towel. And I think of, I'm not sure which Star Trek it is, so I'm not that geeky, but I do have some geek. But it's the Star Trek where Data is actually tempted by the Borg Queen when she puts flesh on him, right? And he was tempted for and he feels guilty, but it was for like literally less than a few seconds. And to him, that was an eternity. But to Picard, when he was confessing that to Picard, it was not that big of a deal. And he's like, he thought it was going to be like, oh, I was tempted and I really thought about it. But to Data, it was just a few seconds, right? So those are the kinds of things we can be tempted to throw in the towel, to give up on our dreams. And it's a matter of still, maybe you have to take a couple of steps back. Maybe you have to re-examine where you're at. Maybe you have to change. Maybe you have to accept help. And oh, for those of us that are super independent, you've been through abuse, and you don't like trusting anyone to help you with anything. I am that definite person. So allowing someone to come in to help you, to be that person, to let your guard down, to get beaten down so hard that you actually have to accept some help. Some of us are thicker headed. And that's because we've been through a lot. We've developed this really, really thick skin, and choosing to still remain kind and choosing to still be a loving person is the harder path. Oh, it is so much the harder path. And I used to laugh. I would get teased a lot as a kid because if there were school assignments and stuff like that, that you got, here's some that were not so difficult, they were a little bit easier, and you could do these ones or you could do these other ones. And I always chose the hell gig assignment. I always wanted the stuff that was more challenging, that was not everybody could do that. And even when I had a teacher that would, he was my grade six math teacher, and he would assign problems, and like these word problems, like the ones where it's like if one train is going at this speed and this train is going at this speed, but it's now a longer route, like which one's going to hit the station first. And I loved those, and I burned through those so friggin' fast. He gave 100 problems, and it was supposed to be done over like the course of a month. And like at the end of the first week, I went back and I got more problems, and I wanted more problems. And it's like, ah, now I have a lot of problems. I like solving them, but I hate dealing with problems that don't have solutions. Those are challenging. Those are the ones that the no win problems, the ones where there is no right answer. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer, and it's shifting, right? And those are, and most of the problems business owners deal with, they're not just black or white. They're not yes or no. And we like those yes or no ones because they're faster, they're easier to deal with. But the ones that are dichotomy, the ones that are on a sliding scale, those are the ones that I find a little bit more maddening, right? Because depending on who you're around, hey Malik, thank you so much for the gifts. Depending on who you're around is going to influence the decision and the outcome. So you have to be aware of not everybody has that same agenda, that same perspective, and being able to see a 360 kind of perspective around things is the bigger challenge, and finding different solutions and finding ones that are going to give the biggest benefit to the most number of people is um, is how you find the biggest way to provide happiness to the most number of people. And the thing is just giving people what it is that they want isn't always the solution. And I used to do this a lot. Everybody like my mug here. I only want 2 cats, now 3, 5, 8, 10. Don't judge me. I had 10 at one time. We're down to 5. So I love cats. Um, Side topic. So one of the things that happen is a lot of times in my corporate environment, I would have leadership. Hey, Susan, welcome. Good to see you. I would have leadership. They would say, you know what, I want this report, and this is what I want in it. And when I was an early analyst, I would create the exact report that they would like and what they asked for. And then I'd give that to them, and then they'd come back and go, well, I don't really like these numbers. Can you run it from this angle? Right? And that used to drive me crazy because as an analyst, I would go through and I'd be very meticulous at making sure I grabbed the correct data from the correct tables, and I'd pull that in and I'd put that in a nice presentation so that they'd have it clear and it had all these graphs and charts and all these kind of things on it. And I was really appreciative to be able to use this tool because I was actually promoted. They saw I had an aptitude for it, and I was promoted, and they sent me for training. And any company that's ever sent me for training has always gotten a really good return on their investment. And so I went for this training, and I was able to pull all this data, but then I'd provide that data. They wouldn't like it because sometimes, because I was so accurate, I would also pull data that showed that we were not as good as they were claiming to be. And they didn't want the customers to see that. Now, they also didn't want to lie about the numbers, but that was a very difficult position for me to be in. They'd be like, okay, well, now I want you to exclude these locations, or I want you to add in these locations and see what the numbers look like then. Did the percentages look better? And so there was, I always laugh when people say the numbers don't lie. And I'm like, yeah, the numbers don't lie, but people do. And people will bend and massage those numbers to look the best that they can. Now, that's not always a nefarious thing, right? This is all part and parcel of being able to help mitigate and manage people's fears, right? So sometimes, depending on who you're dealing with, the information that you're providing to them, they might be really reactive and they may not be responsive to what is being provided, or they may not have the context in which to filter that information through. So you need to be able to provide that in a way that gives them a sense of security, that we are on the right track, that we are a business that they can work with, and we are working towards a common goal, and to have that front and center, right? Now, if you're dealing with, in this particular example, there had been a lot of high emotions and challenges and conflict that happened between the two parties, the two different companies. And so there wasn't a whole lot of trust. There wasn't a whole lot of, because those emotions got really, really high and people were extremely reactive, and because those emotions were not managed properly, ultimately, no matter what numbers we provided, no matter how we looked at the data from their side, from our side, it just wouldn't gel. Why? Because the emotions were not dealt with. So if those things, if you can't manage those emotions, if you cannot stay calm when you want to scream, when you want to call somebody down, when you want to lose it, if you can't stay calm, then that is going to cause more damage. And it doesn't matter what systems, what processes you have in place, it is going to create a great deal of unhappiness. So, doing the hard things more often comes down to your ability to manage your emotions, and if you're a leader, to manage the emotions of the people you have reporting into you, that look up to you, that are expecting you to operate in a way that is trustworthy, that is in alignment with their beliefs of who they think that you are. And so now we're all human, and the problem when you're in leadership is if you have one of those human days, you have to do it in a way that still gives your team confidence. And you also can't be too robotic that you never show any emotions, because then they don't trust you either, right? Um, so it's a matter of finding that balance of what is the comfort level, how much do you open up and share, and how much is appropriate, and allows them that sense of connectedness without feeling overwhelmed that it's now their burden. And I think this is no different in parenting, right? So you can be open with your kids, but if you are too open, then they will start taking on that responsibility. They start taking on that burden of leadership. And that is never a good situation to be in. So doing the hard things often is a matter of facing those emotions, facing your own fears, and being able to speak up around those things. And that is not always something that is easy to do. And in fact, it's usually pretty tough to do those that inner work and face those fears head on. What is it? So I know for myself, and if you've listened to me talk before, if you haven't, I recommend that you check out my YouTube channel, which is Coach Tina B 125. Go there, click subscribe. You'll get notified when I upload the live replays. I've got over 100 videos there where I talk about different things around healing trauma, and I also talk about change management, because I think we spend so much time at work. If you're a 9 to 5, you get off lucky, then you're maybe working 40 hours a week, maybe you get some overtime, something like that. If you're a business owner, we all know that you are working way more than 40 hours a week. And if you've managed to find some of those ways where you are now you've passed that certain threshold, you have a big enough team that you are able to have people work for you, and you're building that kind of stuff out. I question the ones that are only working 4 hours. And personally, I love to work. I love to be able to solve problems. And that's the whole point of business. If you have a business, then you are solving a problem for your customer. Otherwise, they're not going to exchange money. Hey, Maya, I'm doing well. How are you? Um, so it's all about being able to solve problems. And a lot of times it is more what people think, well, if I just provide this system, then everything's fine. And I've dealt with enough engineers and programmers that they get so frustrated because having to deal with the customer is completely illogical. Why? Because it's much more emotional, and they prefer the structure of that, if this happens, then this, right? Else do this, right? They like that very structured approach. And I've been able to work with the engineers and the programmers, and I understand their language, what it is that they want. I've also been on the operator side where they're much more like cowboys, right? It's the wild, wild west, and they don't care what it has to be done in order to get the job done. And they will go outside of the system, they will circumvent everything, they will break everything, and that will make a programmer lose their shit because now they're not following that process, right? So thank you, Maya, for tapping the screen and liking the live. I really appreciate that. And the roses too. I appreciate that. I love the energy. So, doing the hard things, it depends on what the hard thing is, right? And that can be, you know, being much more in tune with emotional sides, right? So for the programmers, that's dealing with the emotional side, dealing with the small talk and connecting with people. It's like, can I just go back to doing my coding because you guys are all crazy and I don't want to deal with this drama, right? Everything's drama to an engineer or a programmer. But on the other side, the people that are the operators, more the cowboys, the sales team, they're like, they like to talk. Make them sit down and do something structured and monotonous and repetitive, and they will lose their mind. They'll be like, no, that is the hard thing, right? So it depends on which perspective you're coming from, and then what kind of work that you need to do to allow you to be much more open and collaborative with whoever it is that you're working with. And this is all stuff that has been part of change management, is being able to identify the emotional side of why people are not dealing with the system, why they're not adapting to the new culture, why they're not adapting to the tools and resources that have been provided for them. And it all comes down to the communication, and it's not so much what you say, it's how you say it, and being able to gain that buy-in, gain that perspective, and allowing people to come on board of understanding why this is important, that they would want to do this stuff and why they want to look into this. And it's not doing the emotional work just so that we can all be touchy feely with our feelings. No, this is all about being productive. And when I don't care what side of the equation that you're on, whether you're the business owner, you're the employee, we all like to feel like we have contributed to something bigger than ourselves. And that what we did actually matters. What we do makes a difference. And it doesn't matter if you're the janitor or the owner of the company, we all play an important role, and it's a matter of understanding what are our roles and why is that role important, and how do we influence other pieces of the business. And when we have that emotional connection to the business, then, and we know that what we do matters, then we're going to try harder. And when we are appreciated for the things that we contribute to the company, then those are the things that we're going to want to do more. It's like it's a dopamine hit, right? If you want. And some people need certain ways of being rewarded. So understanding and being aware of what those things are for ourselves, doing our own inner work so that we know when we're in that fight or flight mode, right? And what's going to trigger those kind of things, why those kind of things come up from us, and how not dealing with those will actually end up costing your business a great deal of money, right? If your people are not in tune with their own emotions, if they are just reacting and trying to do payback and all of those stuff, and that's happening internally with your company, or they're doing that with your customers, and it's like, okay, those are not good things. And you can be around and you can say, don't do those things, that's not appropriate, and you can have all the rules and the structures, and you can have people to enforce the rules and all of that kind of stuff, but that takes a lot of energy. That takes a lot of hard work, and that ends up building layer after layer in your organization to add more people to enforce this and to tap into how these people are behaving within the organization. And there's always that, the slave master cracking the whip kind of thing, staying on top of the team, making sure that they do those things. Whereas if you actually take a little bit of time, it's heavier on the front end to do this work, but the reward is so much better because if you take that time to emotionally connect with your employees, with your customers, they are going to be so much more happy, and they are going to want to do business of their own free will, and they are going to want to um, collaborate. They are going to want to um, be connected, right? Um, so, link in bio, if you're just jumping in, we're talking about how doing the hard things is the path to happiness. And so, those hard things is that emotional work. Doing emotional work is draining, and most of the time, people spend a lot of time avoiding their emotions and finding ways to not have those difficult conversations. And as a business, if you are not able to have those difficult conversations, those things go underground. And now you're really in trouble because you can't fix a problem that you're not aware of. And, or if you're in denial of that problem, or if your team is in denial, it's not us, it's them, it's the customers, it's the marketing team, it's the operations team, it's the commodities team, it is the procurement team that did this, and it's like, oh, the product sucks, or this or that or the other thing. And it's like, if they're not able to have that awareness within themselves, you're not willing to work under women, how can you tell your boss, well, you're probably working in the wrong company and you should just go start your own company with only men. Good luck with that. So that's probably how I would solve that problem. And why are you asking a woman for advice if you don't want to work under women anyway? So you're probably on the wrong channel and you should move on. So being aware of what are the hard things that you that need to be done, and inability to look at your own emotions is a big part of the problem, right? I never said you were a bad person. Um, so, being able to understand what are those challenges that you need to actually face, and what are those fears that you have around whatever is coming up, right, for you. So, in the case of Lincoln Bio, this is a good thing, is why are you not willing to work under women? And why do you have a fear of that? Are you afraid that maybe they are actually better? Are they actually right? Do you believe that they're completely wrong? What is it? They are by the book. Yeah, women don't forget anything. So, um, yes, they're by the book, but also they can be emotional if they don't feel supported. If they are in a state of fear, then, well, if any human being is in a state of fear, they're not going to operate in their best selves, right? So, sticking with the rules, apparently that is a problem, right? Now, that is a good question, is why is by the book a problem? Why is by the book a problem? And being able to really look at that, and and if you think that that is the only way that you can get the results that you're looking for, then I would challenge you to look at a deeper level and understand, how can you actually do things by the book, be high integrity, and still be profitable, right? Imagine working in an organization. Sometimes you need to relax. Yeah, women's version of relaxing and men's version of relaxing are usually a little bit different. I will give you that. But yes. So if a woman is around and she is not relaxed, it's because she is in a state of fear. Okay, so if you are able to step up and show that you can do the things that you need to do, she will relax around you, even if she is your boss. If she is not relaxed and she is uptight, then you need to step up your game. That is the only way to do it, right? Because that's I'm sorry, because women do want to relax, but if it's no different. So I used to do this. I always did the driving. Okay, two reasons. One, I tend to get car sick. Okay, so and that is more of a control issue than anything. And the second reason is when my ex-husband, when he would drive, I would natter at him. I would complain, and it wasn't because I wanted to complain. I wasn't trying to criticize the driving, but there were things that he was doing that caused me to be afraid. And I was like, you are not actually paying attention to what's going on around you. And so, and then the more that I would point things out, the more nervous he got. And the fact is I actually taught him to drive when we were first married. Okay, he had his license, but I actually taught him to drive. So it was actually just easier for him and for me, for me to just be the driver. And so when we'd go on road trips or whatever, I would do the driving. Um, and I'm fine with being a passenger if I'm in the front seat. If I'm in the back seat, I think it's a bit of a claustrophobia thing that is a challenge for me. But yeah, and plus, I love to drive. I love to drive. So there's that, right? So, but I find that the only time I'm critical of driving is because I'm afraid, right? So if your girlfriend or your wife or whatever, if you're technically in the driver's seat and they are complaining and they are criticizing, it's because they are afraid. Help them feel safe, they'll stop bitching. I can promise you that. And that applies to relationships, that applies to driving, that applies in business. If the women around you are bitching about something, they're complaining, they're critical, it's because they're afraid. And maybe that's just because you haven't communicated. And maybe that is just a little bit more communication is what is needed. Maybe they need to feel like you are listening to their concerns. Maybe it's not you have to do more talking. Maybe you have to do more listening. And you have to understand what is bothering them, even if it doesn't make sense to you. Or maybe you get annoyed and you're like, you don't actually trust me to do my job. Because I've been on the leadership side of things. It's like, oh my God, I told you guys, I communicated these things. And what it is they just need to feel heard. And so sometimes you just need to sit back and listen, right? My colleague slammed the door on her. Yeah, there's all kinds of drama that can happen in the work environment just because of not being able to manage the emotions of both ourselves and others. And sometimes when we don't understand what somebody else wants of us, the first reaction is for us to get frustrated or defensive or fight. That fight comes up. That is the first stage of fear, right? So if you want to slam the door or, you know, say a few choice words, whatever those may be, that is usually it's a fear response in us. We don't understand what the other person wants. But if we are in a position of strength, if we are in a position of feeling confident in ourselves, no matter what they bring up, that we're going to be okay, that we're going to work together, we're going to figure this out together, then we're on the same team, right? Then there's no us against them. But so often it can be easy to become defensive because we haven't addressed our own fears. Maybe we don't know what the fuck we're doing, or we're like, shit, I don't know how to solve this problem. And if they see that weakness, they're gonna, overtake me, or they're gonna think I'm not competent, or we have all these fears that go on in our own minds. And being able to address our own fears, and when we are calm and we are confident within ourselves, we can handle any criticism that comes to us. And we can take that in stride by listening and being able to take under advisement and not being so, because it's only the times that we're most insecure that we feel like we need to control every piece, right? If we are confident and we are like, okay, if somebody identifies a gap on the team and they say, you know what, here's these things that you guys weren't even considering, then that is like, okay, that is great. Now, what do we need to solve that problem? Is that problem solvable? What kind of timelines are we working with? What kind of criteria do we need? What do we need to let go of instead so that we can focus on something that is much more important, right? Uh, when she accepts a lot from us, what should we do when she expects a lot from us? Okay, then clarify what it is, what the expectations are, and talk about what your fears are regarding being able to meet those expectations, right? So if you're not sure if you can meet those expectations, what is it that you need? Is it, I don't think I can work that long, or I think that's going to take me this many hours, and I'm not sure how to do it in the amount of time that you're looking for, right? Talk about what it is that you're afraid of why you can't meet her expectations. So versus treating her expectations as unrealistic. Maybe she's not factoring in something that you're aware of and she's either forgotten about it. I've done that before. And it's only when my team had the courage to confront me with that, and I was actually appreciative. I was like, oh shit, you know what? I completely forgot. We also need to do that. No, you're right. We can't do that in this amount of time, and I will adjust the expectations. So you have to ask yourself, is is your boss just being unreasonable, or does she not have the right information to make the correct decisions? Does she treat you fairly when you bring things up, right? When you bring things up and she is able to weigh and measure those kind of things, and she knows that you're not doing it just to try and get out of work, because I know if I sense that somebody's just trying to get out of work, then I'll probably be pretty hard on them. But if I see that you are willing to give everything you've got to be dedicated to the project, that you are going to work hard and that you want the success of the company, and you bring up a challenge, then I know you're not doing that because you're trying to find the easy way out, right? And you have thought of what the problems are, and you are offering also potential solutions, right? So it's not you're just complaining that this is a lot of work. Of course, it's a lot of work. That's why they hired you, right? And it's a matter of everybody on the team being able to work together to solve that. And if you have a better way that you can get it done faster, she would be much receptive to being able to do that in that better way, if you present that in a way that you're not treating her as she's being unreasonable for expecting a lot. Because unless you're somebody who doesn't want to grow, I know myself, I always want to be able to grow, and I want to be able to rise to that challenge. So if she's giving you challenges, also take that as she believes in you, right? Um, because I know my strongest people is who I put the most on, not the weakest people. And I wouldn't give them a whole lot. I would kind of, okay, show me that you can handle this little bit that I'm giving you, and then I will let go, right? And then I will, as you build up and as I can see that you have more strength within you, then I will give you more things. And you're like, no, I don't want more things, right? But if that's the case, then allow, speak about what it is that you need more time with your family, you need more time um, to be creative within your work, you need time to connect with other departments so that you can get things done faster, right? Because I also know that I've been under bosses where they have told me that you can't cross train, because if you have the time to cross train, then therefore you're not maxed out in your regular day. And his belief, he came from much more of a production environment where everything was measured down to the minute. So every minute had to be accounted for. So it didn't make him a bad person, but he was operating in a way that was from his previous work environment. And I had the pleasure of reporting into him, and we had disagreements on that. The funny thing is after I had left the company, that's when he implemented the cross training program that I had suggested. And not only did he do that, but he made everybody change every 6 weeks. So because he didn't like have to fill in on the desks, because he had me to do that, and I could do every desk in the department. And so if somebody called in sick or there was vacation, I had to cover those kind of things, right? But when he had to do it, because they couldn't replace somebody with the skill set that I had, and I was able to jump in on any of the desks. And when he realized, oh, this is a lot of work to have to do this, because I would fill in on their desk, and then after hours, I would do my supervisor work as well, right? So I still had to do all of those things. Um, so learning those different challenges, it, it's taking that time up ahead of to do some of that harder work. It was hard to cross train and make sure everybody was able to do all of the roles that we needed done, and that we had some sort of backup plan should, people be human and, take vacation and, maybe call in sick or something like that. Those kind of things, that there were other things other than work going on in their lives. Oh, God forbid that their people be human, right? So learning to do that harder thing and putting that process in place and giving them that time and not measuring them down to the minute that every little thing that they did was productive. Productivity sometimes comes from taking those steps back. And I've seen this happen in many companies where, you know, that that measured that machine mechanical way of measuring is good in some ways, but it's a dichotomy to be managed, right? You have to have that your key performance indicators, your productivity measurements in place, but they can't be so rigid that it doesn't allow for humans to be humans and happy humans in your workplace, right? So you have to have this balance of productivity and happiness, and the two go hand in hand. And it's usually that emotional work that allows people to become their most productive self, and being personally aware and then also aware of the people that we work with, of how to be our happiest self. So, guys, yeah, doing those hard things, doing that inner work, and being aware of those emotions, being able to control your emotions and manage those in a way that is productive for everybody around you. And being aware of those things is the hard work. Being in denial and just doing the same old is the easy stuff. Being aware of our emotions, being able to speak up, being able to communicate, being able to listen and hear when people are telling us stuff that is uncomfortable is important as well. And having that emotional resilience to receive that negative feedback and not go into those fight or flight modes is um, is where the hard work is. That's so much harder than anything else that you're going to do. So, but it will lead to the greatest amount of happiness personally and also for your business. So, guys, this recording is going to be uploaded on my YouTube channel, Coach Tina B 125. Go subscribe, comment on any of the videos. You've got over 100 free trainings in there. Sometimes I will talk more on the trauma side and being aware of how it affects your business. And I bring these two together because that's who I am. And I share from my own personal experience in hopes that this provides you some little piece that you can take away, you can apply to your life today, whether that's in your personal life or your professional life. So, guys, I hope you found this helpful and come back again tomorrow. Have a great night. Take care.